Now, by any measure, David Tait is a success, a former high-flying city trader and world-class mountaineer who has climbed Everest no less than 5 times.
But he's also a child abuse survivor whose personal story of turning terrible tragedy into triumph has now been made into a film starring Mark Stanley. We'll speak to them both in a moment. Lovely to see you on the sofa with us this morning. First, let's take a little bit of a look at the film.
What about your folks? Kind of quiet on the subject.
We're not really close.
Lone Ranger, huh?
Yep.
Hey, we're gonna meet them?
I doubt it.
All right.
It's not, it's just we lost touch. And... Anyway, I think she's abroad.
She?
Yeah, Mum. Why? Why do you need to know?
It's just stuff that matters to me, that's all. But your dad, is he here?
Yeah, he's got his life.
But he's here, right?
God, it's cold.
Well, we are joined now by David Tait and the actor Mark Stanley, who plays David in the film. Morning to you both.
Good morning.
I watched this last night and it is haunting. It's one of those films that I think you don't forget. It must be incredible for you, David, to have spoken about your life in such a way and to now see it played out on a screen. What's that like for you?
Well, it largely wasn't planned. I tried to write a book a very long time ago, which was rejected by every book agent on the planet. But a very kind guy called Alan picked up my manuscript and decided that it was worthy turning it into a film. I have to say, sitting there watching it has probably been a bigger test for my family in general than myself, because I was there on set watching it be created. So I was led through it gently. I think my family have had to back me more than anyone could ever imagine to get to this point. But it is shocking, lovely, humiliating, all in one every time I see it, and every time I do see it, I take different things away from it.
And it must be hard for you to watch that back, but as you say, for your family, who I'm sure you have spoken to them about what you have been through, but then when they actually see that depicted on screen so amazingly by Mark and so powerfully, for them to then think, oh, that's my dad, that's my, you know, that's my husband, that's heartbreaking, isn't it?
I think my wife Vanessa, an extraordinary lady, who's decided that she was going to back me through this process. And like I said, largely at the beginning it was accidental, how it formed. But finally, when I realised that the story itself had there was an opportunity to maybe change the perception, the complete understanding of the child abuse issue, I decided to throw my weight behind it completely. But there was this rather difficult moment when I sat down with my 16-year-old and he watched it, and then most recently, actually, my 21-year-old son, Seth. Frankly, I was less worried about them viewing what happened to me as a child, more the shortcomings that were precipitated by that throughout the collateral damage and the things that, the way I let down their mother, really.
And one of the many positive things that has come out of the film is actually, it's your relationship, isn't it? Because I imagine you had to get to know each other very well in order to portray this man and his life.
Yeah, I was lucky. I think, you know, I've been given a couple of situations where you're playing people who are real and whose experiences you're trying to get in touch with and portray. But David, through his own bravery, he was so forthcoming with information and his experience that it allows for a good blueprint to base what you're going to be doing in terms of work on. You know, it's unbelievable that we could sit there for hours and we could talk about these experiences, and having gone through what David's gone through and to gain an understanding and an insight, sometimes it's quite a privilege in the profession that I do. You know, when something isn't fictional and you've got the person right in front of you, and there's, you know, there is as forthcoming with their experience as David was. It's very helpful, and it gives you a great insight into that particular subject.
One of the most powerful parts of the film is when you meet your father, which is portrayed by Mark. Let's have a look at... There's so many questions I'd like to ask you this morning, but let's have a look at this when David goes to meet his dad.
Heard you got kids you don't see. I provide. Absent father sort of thing. Hmm? Yeah. Dad doesn't get to see his kids. It's, failure on my part, really. But there again, leaving them alone. Best thing for them, really. When you say, Dad. Wouldn't you?
And David, of course, you know, it's a staggering scene to watch, but of course that confrontation made all the more significant for people who, you know, who don't know the story, because your dad was involved in abuse.
He was. Yes, it took an awful long time to really come to terms with. It wasn't as gratuitous, shall we say, as the other scenes in the film. But it led on in a strange, odd way. It just led on from that. And then I distanced myself from him, separated myself for about a dozen years, I think. And then on impulse, I made a phone call to him. And I think it was driven by a couple of things. One, I wanted to show off that I'd made something. And I really wanted to, you know, a bit of an I am moment.
Successful career.
I had more luck than judgment, but I'd had the ability to sit in front of him and see, I think. And the other thing was, deep down inside, despite all that, you still do want a father. You do. And I own up to it, that I was conflicted, and I tried my best to try and reconcile, and we never spoke about it, and we just meandered through to the point of his death.
Very quickly, Mark, what do you want people to take away from this film? Because we're running out of time.
I think from this film, I hope people can gain the same insight that I got from being able to portray David, to be able to understand the kind of behaviour that's manifested from child abuse and the kind of collateral damage that comes from it, to be aware of it, and hopefully people can find their voice just as David did, come forward, and in that way then the problem doesn't breed in silence. It can be dealt with, and people can move forward with their lives.
It's such a powerful story, and it's wonderfully told. I know it's been very hard for you to talk about it and to see it on screen, but I think it's going to be really positive for so many people to watch it, so thank you.
Thank you both.
Thank you.
And Sulphur and White will open in UK cinemas from March the 6th. And if you have been affected by any of the issues raised, please visit bbc.co.uk/action line.
That is it from us today. Breakfast back tomorrow from 6 o'clock in the morning.